Hi, everyone out there. Welcome to the Vegas Dice Kings. I'm Danny Craps, along with the iconic Johnny Law and our special guest who came to Vegas on a weekend and he never left. 47 years in the gaming business. Take it away, Johnny Law, and introduce this man, this iconic gaming figure.
So now you guys know, just a couple of weeks ago I introduced myself, and we're trying to get a format how the show's going to go ahead forward. And I said, I had mentioned that the Facebook has a couple different groups. One group is I Grew Up in Vegas, baby, but there's a couple other groups. More of a pictorial history is actually the name of one of them, and they told me about this guy, Ralph Delagatti. You give me the book, I'm looking at the book, reading the book. This is the first book that I've ever read with Vegas stuff that is using the actual words, the exact same thing that we use. One of the most common one is chips. Everybody says chips. They were checks. We call them checks. That's what people said. There's a whole new vocabulary. So Danny talked to Ralph. I asked if I come over to Ralph's house and meet him. We talked, and this guy's a treasure chest. We're looking for these old Vegas stories. So you've heard me say that guys like myself, crap dealers and Danny's, in the 70s, the 80s, the end of the table for table crap dealer tipping kind of thing, there was a generation before that who kind of set the foundation in a new era of casinos in Vegas. And I'm going to tell you what, this guy right here, Ralph Delagatti, his book, he spells it right out. It's the most amazing book. I showed you last week. We'll get a copy of something to show you. I'm going to have Ralph talk about it a little bit more. He's a very interesting man, okay? We're not just talking about being a crap dealer then. We're talking about a way of life. And a way of life meant Danny, myself, and Ralph. Ralph was part of the foundation. That's amazing. So I got Ralph today as a guest, and he's going to give us a little spill on his book, on his life, on the casinos, on his own personal history. So let me introduce Ralph Delagatti.
Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Dan.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to start off with what got me to come out west from New York, which is where I was born and raised. I lived in Queens, New York. It was a little Italian section of New York City. And I went to high school and I went to college at Hofstra University in Long Island. And I decided that I wanted to get somewhere else. I felt like there had to be more to the world than just the northeast of the country, and I wanted to see new things. So I wanted to save money enough. I had my middle sister had moved out to California, and I wanted to be able to save enough money to buy a car and drive out there. I didn't want to fly. I wanted to have my own car. Now I was only 19 when I got this idea. So I was working at a department store called Lord & Taylor in Garden City, New York. I worked part-time when I was in school and worked full-time in the summer. So I was working there, and this is the thing that I wanted to talk about that changed my whole life and how I ended up in Las Vegas with all these stories to tell you. There was a lady that used to come into the shoe department, which is where I was working, ladies' shoes. And she was a little delicate-looking Southern belle. She would come in and say, "Sir, do you have any size 5 AAA shoes?" And I would say, "Well, let me take a look. I don't think so." So I would look in the back, and there was never anything even close. And I would come out and tell her no. And she came in a couple of times with a sad look on her face. And she was such a sweet little thing, and beautifully dressed. And I wanted to help her out. So I told her, next, give me your phone number, and the next time you come in, I'm going to call all the manufacturers and see if they have any size 5 AAAs, because they make small size shoes for display cases, Maybe they might have something. So, she got all excited and gave me a phone number and her address and her whole history practically. And I said, okay, give me a few days and I'll call you back. So I called everybody up, all the, Martinique was one of the big ones. You women will know who that is. And I ended up getting a bunch of shoes, much more than I expected. I ended up with 34 pairs of 5 AAA in the back. And so I called her up and I said, I don't remember her name. I called up and I said, I've got some shoes for you. I got a couple of pair. Why don't you come in and take a look and see if you like them? She got all excited. She said, are they really 5 AAA? And I said, yeah, I got a couple of pairs for you. Come on in. And oh my God, she got all excited. Within 30 seconds, she was in the place. It seemed like it anyway. She was in the place ready. So I had one of the stock boys help me, and we kept bringing out 6 or 8 pairs of shoes at a time, the two of us, dropping them in front of her, and she was just sitting there stunned with all these shoes we were stacking up in front of her. And I said, go ahead, we'll leave you alone and try them on and see which ones you like, and whatever you want, just set it aside. And I figured she'd buy 3 or 4 pairs, and she bought half of them. She bought 17 pairs of the shoes. Wow. and a lot of money. Some of them were very expensive, and was tickled to death. And so anyway, me and the stock boy had to help her load the shoes in the trunk of her car. We went downstairs with her, and she just couldn't thank me enough. You think I gave her the moon? She was just hysterical about all the shoes she had. And I said, well, call me every couple of weeks and I'll see if I get, they're probably making more as time goes by when they get new models, and I'll have some more for you. Okay, fine. So the next day, I get a phone call, and it's her husband on the phone, and he says, Ralph, my wife has told me what you did for her, and we'd love to have you come and bring a guest and be my guest for dinner in the clubhouse. I own some racehorses. It was a trotter track that was only a few blocks from the department store where I worked. He says, come on in and be my guest for dinner. He said, I got to show you my appreciation. My wife wants to have you for dinner. And I said, you really don't have to go through all that trouble. I said, you want to do something for me? Give me a hot tip someday. And I hung up the phone. I didn't really want to bother the guy about dinners. It wasn't necessary. So that's it. I forgot about it. The next day he calls me up. He says, we got a horse going tonight. Go on bet on this race, this horse number, and you might win the bet. So I went. I bet a couple of bucks. I didn't know. Well, I took my mother with me. She liked to bet on the jockey's colors. That's the color she liked. That's the horse she would bet on. But anyway, the horse won. So I said, well, that's okay. Good. So I took whatever few dollars it was, and I went back to work. And he calls me again the next day, and he gives me 2 horses, this race and this race, 2 different horses. So I said, okay. So I went that night, and I brought a little more money with me, and I bet a little more, and they both won. So I said, this is really interesting. This might be a little better than just a lucky break that I won these 2 races. So I said, I hope he calls me again. So 2 days later, I was really upset he didn't call me the next day. And 2 days later, he called me again with 1 horse, and I bet a bunch on it, and it won. So now I was poor. I didn't have any money. I made a few dollars working, and it just kept me in bubble gum practically. My family was, they were middle-class people. They didn't have a lot of extra money. So I didn't have any savings account or anything. So I went to my brother-in-law, and I told him, I've got this money. I don't want to carry it around. Help me out. So he opened a savings account for me, and I put a couple $1,000s in it. And I said, I want to save enough to buy this 58 Corvette. It's $4,000. I want to order a new 58 Corvette to drive out to California. So he said, okay. So he helped me get this savings account opened up. And I went back, and he gave me another race, and I won another race. And I had $4,000 in the account, just enough to buy the car. And I had a pocket full of cash for the next race.
So it sounds like Ralph invented the term insider trading.
Yeah, boat race. That's what.
Crap dealers have come up with a lot of names for a lot of things.
So anyway, he gives me another horse. Now this time, ordinarily, all he did was sell me the horse and the race that he was going to be in, whatever race number it was. But this time he gave me, it was like it was choreographed. He said he's going to pull out from the pack as they come around the far turn. He'll stay on the outside until they get into the stretch, and then he'll pass everything going by on the outside. So I said, okay, if you say so. And I went down, I don't remember, but it was everything I had. I had a bunch of tickets like this in my hand, but I probably got close to another 4,000 out of it, and he won, because he was a pretty long shot. Anyway, I'm standing there just waiting for the darn race to end so I can go cash my tickets. And I'm watching the horse, and he comes around exactly as what they said. He pulls out, and they get into the stretch, and he's flying like the other. I think the guys were like, they were like pulling back on there, but it was passing like they were standing still. And then as he passed the lead horse, their wheels locked. Both horses went down on the track. My horse broke, I think, one or two legs. It was screaming on the track, and they shot it. I don't know if they do that today, but they shot the horse on the track and dragged him off. And I'm sitting there with all these tickets, and I just threw them up in the air, and I said, if you can't win a boat race, it's time to quit. So I went, and I ordered my Corvette. They said it's going to take a couple of weeks, and then they called me and said they're going to take a little longer. I didn't want to wait that long, so I went to a Cadillac agency. My father liked Cadillacs and Buicks, and they had this black Cadillac convertible with red leather interior, 1957, that had just been turned in for the brand new 58s that were coming out. And I said, oh my God, how much is that? And it was more than what I had. So I said, look, I got 4,000. If you'll take the 4,000, I'll give you the cash. I had it right with me, and give me that car. Otherwise, I can't buy it because I don't have another penny more than that, which I didn't. And they said, okay, you got a deal, and I drove that black Cadillac out, and you're going to see a picture of it. I took that car to Hollywood, and I tell you what, it was better than being a millionaire to drive that car around. You would pull up and just open the door, and the girls would jump right in those days. It was great. But those
are the photos of the car I saw, right?
Yes.
Because I had a 60 Cadillac. When the MGM fire happened, I knew a crap dealer there who was doing things and stuff, and when the joint burned down, everybody was out of a job. He was a little bit tight, so for $1,100 I got a 60 Cadillac convertible and a Betamax.
A Betamax.
And I think the Betamax might have weighed more than the Cadillac. I don't know if you remember the old Betamax. I got it from Sun Stereo in Commercial Center, Dickie Jewett's brother. If anybody knows Dickie Jewett out there.
I knew Roxy Jewett.
So listen, here's our website. I mean, email again. Send us your stories. All right. Ralph's talking about a lot of good stuff. I'd like for everybody to get some input in there. So, anyways, go ahead, Ralph.
Well, so I drove the car. I saved some money from my paychecks, and I drove the car out to California. I was 19. I was supposed to go with one of the guys that I grew up with, a couple of the guys. Well, one of the guys that I grew up with, his brother had made a success in Hollywood as an actor. He was doing really well. His name was Paul Picerni, and he was writing his brother, Charlie, who was my age, to come out, and that he'd get us started with the SEG Screen Extras cards. And so I told Charlie, I'm going to go out. He said, I'll go with you. But when the time came for me to go, he wasn't able to. So I went by myself. As I was 19, I drove across into L.A. I moving in with my sister for a while, and I went out to Republic Studios and got a job working there. And I was working on 3 of the series. I was walking all over the place, but I was working on M Squad, which was Lee Marvin. Wagon Train, you've all heard about that, with Ward Bond. That's one of the most famous westerns that's ever been made on television, Western series. They still show it. So that was being filmed there. And Wagon Train...
In your book, you have a little description of some of the stuff the Republic Studios did, right?
Oh, yes.
Because...
I put up a picture of the shooting schedule for one of the days there that show all those different shows. So I'm sure they'll be putting that up while we're talking about it.
So what I thought was, because I never heard of them. So I went on, looked them up on the computer, and I think it stuck out. You guys did a lot of westerns.
Very much westerns at that place. In fact, if you know where the Hollywood sign is?
Yeah.
On the other side of the Hollywood sign, not the building side where all the buildings are, but on the opposite side, it was all just cattle area. It was like an open ranch, and it was grass, and that's where they filmed all their cattle drives and wagon trains and everything, just right on the other side of where the Hollywood sign is. Yeah, the only thing they had to worry about was those vapor trails from the jets.
Oh, right.
And whenever there was one of those, they held up shooting because they had to be careful. But,
so when I looked it up, though, I'll tell you what was. They said that Republic Studios was one of the first studios to make an art out of movies, because it made it sound like a lot of stuff that studios were doing were shorts, like Three Stooges, these little 20-minute.
Yes.
And it sounded to me like Republic Studios was one of the first to put the art of a full-length movie together.
And they did a lot of John Wayne stuff early on, too. In the late 30s and early 40s, it was all Republic Studios.
And you were meeting celebrities back then, right?
That's the thing about working there. Me being from New York, you never see a celebrity in New York, because if you're walking on the street, you don't even look at who you're passing by anyway. You don't expect it. But when I walked into Republic Studios, me being a kid that went to the movies every Saturday and spent a whole day there, we'd go to on Saturday night and Saturday, and they'd show 2 movies, 4 cartoons, a newsreel, and my mother would give me a lunch, and all the kids would go. It was 10 cents. And we'd spend the whole day there, every Saturday. So I got to be a big movie fan. Now I walk into Republic Studio, and everybody I see, I recognize having seen in the movies, and every time I turned around, I tripped over a big movie star. I mean, it was amazing to me.
Right?
I was just crazy about what I was seeing in that place. Betty Davis, I walked right by her, I said, it must be somebody made up to look like Betty Davis, but it was Betty Davis.
You were right in the groove with it, right?
Yeah. So,
well, you mentioned about in New York City. When you're in New York City, everybody kind of blends in. So when I was little, like kindergarten, first, second, third grade, my dad lived in Manhattan. I would spend the school year at my mom's in Pittsburgh, then would go to my dad's in New York City, then eventually New Jersey. But what you're talking about is one of the things that really stood out. My dad used to take me to Rockefeller Center to watch the Rockettes, usually on the Easter show or the Christmas show, but he would take me to a restaurant, Jack Dempsey's, and my dad would point out all these famous celebrities who I barely knew because I was still a little kid. He would take me to the Automat. But one of the things that stick out most out of Manhattan, well, because you're from Queens, we live in Manhattan. One of the things that stuck with me forever about New York, there was a billboard for Joe Camel, and it blew these smoke rings out.
Yeah, I remember that.
Gigantic,
Camel
giant
cigarette.
And I used to always go down there and I never smoked a cigarette in my life. When we were trying to do, you're gonna do snuff, you're gonna do cigarettes or whatever, I just never had an urge to do, so maybe I'll credit Joe Camel, but New York is an amazing place.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, at Republic Studios, I was amazed at all the stars that I was seeing, and all the extras and all the character actors that I recognized from all the movies that I had seen. So I was thrilled. If I had money, I would say, I'll pay you to work here. You don't have to pay me. One of the other things that I found we were getting paid for, and it didn't make sense. They had an area where it was like a big stable area. Because they had so many westerns, they had a lot of horses that they kept in these stables. They even had some cattle there grazing because it was a big area, a big place. And we used to have to go there every day for a certain amount of time and train with quick draw, holster with a 45, a western style 45, bull whips, throwing bowie knives, and a lariat. Trying to rope, we'd have to learn how to throw a lariat. And we had to learn all that in case they ever needed us for some shots. We had to be able to do those things. And plus, the big thing was ride horses, and they gave you pretty spirited animals, that we had to learn how to ride. So here they're paying me to ride horses and practice quick draw and do all that stuff. By the way, for those of you who like westerns, a lot of stories about quick draw, that's not really what really happens. What you're supposed to do when you do a quick draw is, as you grab the gun, as you hit the gun, this thumb cocks the hammer before it clears your holster. It's just a move like this. And you shoot. Just you move like this, and that's the end of it. So that's what we had to learn. And sometimes you see a guy with a cast on his leg, and
I know.
and you know that he tried it with a loaded pistol and shot himself, because you have to cock the hammer before the gun clears the holster. Anyway, so we had to do that as well.
With Ralph being there, just met Ralph a week or so ago, and all of these things come together, and I know it's because we were crap dealers. And he just now said something like, he was at Republic Studios telling him, I'll pay you to work here. I work at the stadium.
Loved it.
I work at the stadium. Every time I see my bosses at the stadium, I said, listen, I'll pay you $50 if I can come do this every time. That's how much fun it was. So, it's funny, crap dealers have a little bit different outlook on things.
Yeah. But that was, I was just 19, remember, when I first got there, so I was just thrilled about everything that was going on. The thing that fascinated me the most was not the idea about becoming an actor, but getting into the production part of it, what it takes to make a half-hour TV show or an hour-and-a-half movie. The scripts, the costumes, the sets, the animals. There's so many different departments that have to come together for that half hour or hour and a half. And that's what I wanted to get into, what I wanted to make a career out of. And I decided to get into production. I didn't care about the acting part of it. I wanted to get into production. But the quick story before I finish up. I got to know Lee Marvin very well. A friend of mine, Pete, who moved out there, he was with my group in New York, and he and his family had moved there just before me, so we hung around together. We got to meet Lee Marvin on the Republic studio a lot, and we were running around with him, hanging around with him a lot after work. He had a home, I think it was in Bel Air or Beverly Hills, that he would go to on weekends, but he had an apartment on the lot at Republic Studios because they shot early in the morning, and the traffic in Los Angeles is impossible, so he stayed during the week on the lot. He had a real nice apartment there. And so that was like our place of choice when we were running around down in Hollywood all week long. And so we had a lot of fun together, going out after work. But there's a story about Lee. When I was younger and I went to the movies and I saw Lee Marvin in a Randolph Scott movie. I think the movie was called Hangman's Knot. And all throughout that movie, Lee Marvin was showing off about how fast he was at quick draw. Anybody who went up against him, it was like a joke. Yeah, well, go ahead, you make your move and I'll blow you up. And it was so easy. He always had a big smile on his face. And he had a thing that he did whenever he gripped the pistol with these fingers were always wiggling like little snakes on the end of the gun. And that's how he did it through every movie he ever made. You watch for it next time.
Oh, wow.
Wow. And he just had that thing about wiggling his fingers while he was holding the pistol. But anyway, now all through the movie's killing people like a joke. He doesn't even pay attention because he knew how easy it was going to be. He was that fast. Now it comes to the end, and of course he's facing the hero, Randolph Scott. And they did this in a way I'd never seen before. That's why it interested me so much. You didn't see Randolph Scott. The camera was shooting right over his shoulder at Lee Marvin the whole time. And Lee Marvin is, well, yeah, you're talking, but go ahead, make your move. Let's get this over with. I got to go somewhere or whatever. And he was so sure about how easy this was going to be. And then he said, well, okay. So now he goes for his pistol and he goes like this, and that's about as far as he went, maybe 2 inches, and he shot. And he looks at his hand. He said, what? I'm like this. They didn't even get any close to his gun, and he's already shot. So he overacted it, but it was beautiful the way he did it. He kept looking at an empty hand, like Randolph Scott, like he was crazy to be that fast, and then he fell on his face. So
Wow.
I told him how impressed I was by that. I had never seen it done that way, and he got a big kick out of that. They said, "You really remember that much?" I said, "Yeah."
Wow.
So after that, every time I saw him on the lot, no matter where it was, if it was in the commissary and he was eating, or if I was walking on one of the streets and he was coming the other way, he would stop whatever he was doing, jump up and do that scene and fall on his face, No matter where it was, and everywhere on the lot, it would embarrass the hell out of me. And but that's what he would do. He'd go through that scene no matter what. So one day I got off early and I had time. I saw on the schedule that he was going to be shooting something on M Squad, and I wanted to watch it. So I went over and I was standing next to one of the cameras, shooting down at, it was like an office. I don't know if it was a police office or some business office, and he had to come in walking on the left. And I wanted to watch the shoot. So I'm standing there, and they do all their preparations, and then they get ready and say, "Okay, action, camera," and all that. And Lee comes walking out from the left, and I'm crouched there watching it, and he sees me, and he stops and does the whole thing.
My God.
And the director jumps off the screen. What the is going on here, like that, screaming, cursing, and I ran. I didn't stay to see what happened or what. I ran out of the place. I was hysterical laughing, but I figured he's going to get me fired if they find out he's doing it on account of me, and I don't want to get fired.
Did you wave like this?
No. but I ran away because of that. It was so funny.
That's
that he did
amazing.
that.
I never knew that about Lee Marvin. That
He was so much fun.
he used to move those Piggly Wigglies.
Oh yeah. You watch that movie he made with John Wayne.
Who Shot Liberty Valance?
Who shot Liberty Valance?
You watch how he handles the pistol and that. You'll see his fingers are like little snakes.
And his favorite saying too in a lot of his movies, "Yeah, dude." He liked to say that a lot.
Right.
Yeah, dude.
Well, I'll tell you, he was a great guy. We had a lot of fun with him. A lot. We went to so many different parties where they were having big stars. They were having like Sammy Davis on Mulholland Drive, and we got into the parties because we were with him. He'd take us with him. We got into all the big parties, and there's a lot of stories about that. I'll tell you someday. But
so when we start talking about casinos, I am sure you have come across guys who were from back then doing the movies. You had something in common with them.
Well, I did. Once I got into the casinos, I would see like Lee J. Cobb. I met him at Sammy Davis's party, and I was out on a balcony. He came out, and we got friends. And he used to come to see me when I was at the Aladdin. Lee J. Cobb and Betty Grable came to the Aladdin. She was living in Vegas at the time, and I had met her out there. But there was a lot of people that came in, dropped in at the Aladdin by accident, and I would say, "Hey, I call them over. And this is Ralph. I'm working here now. I'm not at Republic Studios anymore."
Well, I know that Ralph has a ton of pictures of stuff like this, and the reason I mention this is because last week I told you, when I was new in town, I'd been here long enough, I was at the Flame, Frank Sinatra come in and sat down next to me, and it wasn't like, a goofy tourist. It was like he was just another guy. Like you're talking about Lee Marvin, these guys, even when you're back in California.
They were just people.
We're just guys. We're just guys.
They
you know
were
what I mean?
just
And everybody's
regular.
the same.
Elvis, Buzz Aldrin, Lee Marvin. They were regular, just like you
Just
and I.
regular guys,
And that's
right?
the way they stayed. They didn't get that. That attitude about being something extra special, and which I can't blame some of them, but they never got that. In fact, Elvis was uncomfortable around. When I first met him, he was only 3 years old. I was 22. He was about 25, so he was still very young, and he was uncomfortable around all the biggies, all the swells, and he used to stay in the dealership with us and play cards with us. That's where they would have all these big things going on upstairs in the casino, and he would come and hide with us.
I talked last week, for the last couple of weeks, one night, John Travolta and Muhammad Ali together took him to Alias Smith and Jones one night. I would take Florence Henderson, would go out, do stuff, whatever, and that's just the way it was. We were all in the same boat.
Yeah.
So now we can talk about this stuff forever. I want to start hearing more about Las Vegas
Okay.
and when you got here and stuff, and I'm hoping that You come on the show next week?
Absolutely, sure, absolutely.
You got them
Thank-
holding them
thank
to
you.
it, Danny.
Listen,
All right.
I am so mesmerized by, a lot of people have stories how they came to Vegas and so forth. Johnny Law has his, how he did everything. But let me tell you, someone like Ralph Delagatti who left New York, a lot of guys at that young age wouldn't even dream about going across country, going to California, stopping in Vegas, and then going from there. It's just unbelievable.
Just how Vegas came into some men's life. Like I said, I was hitchhiking to California. I wasn't even coming here. Ralph went up here for a weekend and ended
47
up
years
staying
later.
here till today. So, tell you what, next week we're going to go ahead and start talking about Ralph in the casino business. He got about Ralph is dynamite because he represents. You hear me talking about the 70s, 80s. You know how crazy we were. But the foundation for all of that was built by guys like Ralph. Ralph was a big boss. Ralph was a very respected man in the business, and he has a wealth of stories. We could talk about that stuff forever. However, we're going to have Ralph on next week. Until then, we'll see you guys. Send some emails, all right? We're open for you, all right?
See you next week.
See you
Vegas
next
Dice
week.
Kings 22 at gmail.com. Please send those cards and
Give us some
letters.
feedback.
Yes, yes.